Is exactly what we wanted to hear. And following what has been a pretty exciting week of transactions for the Blue Jays acquiring Jesus Sanchez, and now with spring training games starting in just one day, we have a new update from Shai Davidi revealing that Ross Atkins isn't done as it pertains to looking at acquiring further talent. We're going to break down this new report and discuss what it means going forward and discuss one player that has been on the radar of the Jays in the past and is now picking up some steam in the rumor mill. But not only that, we have some updates on their newly signed player they got yesterday, and that's also better than fans initially realized. Well, there's a ton of other comments on spring training and much more. But before we get into all, folks, and there's more to discuss, tons, make sure to hit the subscribe button. You guys have an absolute beast with the support, and it truly means the world to me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting closer and closer to spring training games. I believe they start tomorrow, so on Friday. But either way, let's dive into some updates. Now, of course, we know on the channel, if you've been following it for a little bit here, they've been involved in a lot of different rumors. But Shai Davidi dropped an article last night talking about kind of Jesus Sanchez, the way the team's rolling. But he made a little bit of a point here that had fans intrigued. He went on to say, to that end, Jesus Sanchez's acquisition from Houston for Joey Loperfido was aimed at restoring some of the lost power, and the Blue Jays continue to poke around the market looking for ways to improve. This part is very important. The last bit there, continue to look at ways to improve. Now, you look at the market, who's available. We'll kind of dive into a few different players here, but let's start with the fact that this is extremely, encouraging, because if you watched my video with Keegan yesterday, and I highly suggest you go watch that entire thing. Throughout it, he did mention a few times there is a chance they go out and look at an external option, especially to mash left-handed pitching. And for Shai Davidi to come out yesterday and say they're still looking at the market is crucial, because Ross Atkins also said the exact same thing. He said, with a surplus of outfielders, Ross Atkins said he's open to more acquisitions. We're open to thinking about different ways of structuring the 40-man and the 26-man and beyond, but feel very good about the starting point, but they are not closing the door on future acquisitions, and they're never closing the door on talent. And of course, this has opened up the rumor mill for a couple different things. Now, of course, we look at the way the team is kind of laid out right now. Jesus Sanchez is due for most of the time in left field. Davis Schneider, Nathan Lucas, of course, also going to be playing some if he doesn't get traded. But Davis Schneider is kind of the odd man out. In a perfect world, he bats against left-handed pitching, but he hasn't shown the ability, especially last year, to mash lefties. People think he did. He didn't. He was barely above league average against lefties, dominated right-handed pitching. And of course, a lot of that was because of the matchups, super favorable matchups they were putting him in. They need someone to mash lefties, and that's where Randal Grichuk comes back into play. Now, I'll dive in a couple other guys, but let's focus on Randal Grichuk for a minute. Had a video 4 or 5 days ago. It just got real surrounding their actual pursuit of Grichuk. Now, you can see here, even if it's only a platoon partner for Lucas, another bat now feels like a necessity. We've had a run of lefty mashing outfielders signed in the past few days, but there's still a couple out there. Now, this tweet was before the Jesus Sanchez trade, but that doesn't change anything because they still need a lefty masher. He is 1 year removed from a 139 WRC plus, and he crushes lefties. And I'm going to ride on this train till I die, because you look at his, Savant in 2024, just a year before last, red all the way across the board, essentially. Now, last year, he had a bit of a down year. You'd be buying low, but he has experience with the organization. He has experience with just kind of being a bench bat. I would much prefer, and I love Davis Schneider, the certainty of Randal Grichuk in the sense of he's been around for a long time. Former Blue Jay, of course. The Jays were trying to, or there's rumblings about him over the past few trade deadlines and last year. It makes sense. Now, there are some other guys, of course, like Rhys Hoskins and some other players available who I'll dive into in future videos. I like the fit of Nathan Lucas. He mashes lefties, and it makes, or not Nathan Lucas, Randal Grichuk mashes lefties. It makes all the sense in the world. And again, we've kind of been following along here. Grichuk being rumored. Now, Shai Davidi coming out and saying that they're still looking at ways to improve. It's probably not going to be via the trade market, though it could actually, especially if they move off of Nathan Lucas. They need a surefire lefty masher. They can get it, and they got the righty masher and Jesus Sanchez. Let's have a little bit of a platoon going, because in a perfect world, Jesus Sanchez doesn't play that often against lefties, and they have a guy like Davis Schneider or Randal Grichuk that can go in, fill in every day against lefties, and go from there. But let me know. Obviously, I had a video on this a few days ago. Do you want to see Randal Grichuk join the Toronto Blue Jays? Do you think it makes sense? Do you have some other options that you believe kind of makes even more sense? Let me know. And it's an interesting time, especially with Randal Grichuk being kind of a veteran and playing for the Jays in the past. But yeah, Shai Davidi confirming the Jays are still interested in the market. Now, moving on from that, we have a couple other updates. Now, of course, yesterday they claimed Ben Cowles off of the waivers from the Cubs. And there's actually been a lot of Jays fans excited about this, talking about how it's a low-risk move, someone who breathes and bleeds defense. You can see here from February 2nd, Cubs' Ben Coyles has elite defensive chops. And honestly, the more I've researched this player, yes, he's not going to be a super high upside play. I'm pretty darn excited about Mr. Coyles because, and when I say excited, he's not going to be someone who is going to have a ton of playing time, but they needed depth in the outfield, right? They absolutely needed it. Of course, Leo Jimenez, obviously, he's the obvious fit to come up, but he hasn't shown the ability to be really good offensively or defensively at the MLB level. There's a real way now, and reporters are starting to come out, Keegan Matson and others, that Ben Cowles actually makes an impact in spring and could find his way onto this team a lot sooner. I'm not saying out of spring, but maybe a lot sooner than people realize if injuries occur, God forbid. But it's Leo Jimenez's spot to lose, but Cowles is right there, and that puts a lot of pressure on him, and that's something you always want to see, especially at the major league. So seeing, some more clips come out about how elite his defense is, his stolen base ability, it's better than I think a lot of people, and even myself, initially thought. Low risk, high reward, and reward in this instance is, of course, relative to reward for, other players being a solid kind of utility guy. So let me know down below your thoughts are on that. But speaking even more of being better than we thought, I want to show you guys something here. And we can talk about this a little bit. And it's, of course, Jesus Sanchez. Let's look at some of his stats under the hood here. So you can see here in 2024 versus right-handed pitching, he hit with a 797 OPS plus. In 2023 against right-handed pitching, an 808 OPS plus. Career as a pinch hitter, 833 OPS. An 810 OPS, hitting 1 through 3, and we presume against righties, so probably hit 2. Career at Rogers Center, 811, or career in a dome, rather, 811 OPS plus, career in a dome. That's not Rogers Center, obviously. He doesn't have 733 at-bats at Rogers Center, but of course Miami has a dome and things like that, I believe. This is exciting stuff, and the more you think about Juan Sanchez and the fit, and the more you think about ways that this team has continued to improve kind of under the hood here, he could be a pinch hitter. He's been very good in the past, and that's something they're going to absolutely use because they always do it. John Schneider always comes out and uses his players to their utmost ability, right? The most versatile team in the MLB. They're going to use him as a pinch hitter, whether that be taking out Miles Straw, someone else, David Schneider. Also, they're probably going to use him top 3 in the lineup. He thrives there. And of course, some of these are low sample size. Some of them aren't. He mashes righties. They have the righty masher, and it all kind of comes full circle with the Randall Grichuk thing. Get a lefty masher who does the same thing, but versus lefties and can play defense. Because I think Jesus Sanchez is an underrated defender, and all of a sudden, yes, you didn't get Kyle Tucker. Yes, you didn't get some of these big guys, but you got a very solid tandem here, and you can figure out later what you do with Nathan Lucas because he's probably going to lose some playing time either way. But I don't know. I'm excited. A lot of these things are now that the season's about to start, I'm a lot more excited about some of the acquisitions that they've made. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this, folks. A lot of things on the horizon. We're going to keep you up to date every step of the way. Thanks for watching. See you later.
There's a very particular hum that settles over a baseball organization the night before spring training games begin. And if you listen closely enough, you can hear it in Toronto right now. It's the sound of unfinished business. The Blue Jays have spent the past week quietly nudging the roster forward, not with fireworks but with intent. And when I heard the latest report, I'll admit I smiled to myself in that slightly dangerous way that suggests Ross Atkins might still be sharpening the knife. The acquisition of Jesus Sanchez was supposed to be the punctuation mark on an active stretch, a neat little sentence that read power restored, move on. But according to Shai Davidi, this front office isn't remotely ready to put the pen down. The key phrase, the one that should make fans sit up straighter in their chairs, was simple and loaded all at once. The club continues to poke around the market looking for ways to improve. That's not filler. That's a door deliberately left ajar. If you've been with us for a while here on the Blue Jays Report, you'll know that's music to my ears. This roster has been crying out for clarity, especially when it comes to balance. Sanchez helps, no question. He brings legitimate thump against right-hand pitching, and when you dig under the hood, the numbers whisper promise rather than shout fluke. His comfortable hitting near the top, his effective in domed environments, and has quietly been a better pinch-hitting option than many realize. That matters over 162 games, even if it doesn't trend on social media. I had a little chuckle when I saw some fans downplay the move, because this is exactly the kind of addition that looks smarter in July than it does in February. But context is everything, and this roster still has an unresolved riddle. The outfield picture feels full, yet incomplete. You look at the current mix and you can almost see the problem staring back at you through the spring sunshine. Against righties, The Jays can do damage. Against lefties, things get murkier. Davis Schneider has become something of a folk hero, and I love the story as much as anyone, but the reality is less romantic. He doesn't punish left-handed pitching the way the narrative suggests, and last season exposed that gap more clearly than many wanted to admit. That's why one familiar name has begun to feel less like nostalgia and more like logic. Randall Grichuk keeps circling this conversation for a reason. Strip away the memories and what you're left with is a veteran bat who has a proven, recent track record of demolishing left-handed pitching. 1 year removed from elite production, you're talking about a classic buy low scenario with upside that fits a very specific need. He knows the city, he understands the expectations, and perhaps most importantly, he offers certainty. In a game built on probabilities, that's gold. When Ross Atkins talks about being open to restructuring the 40-man and never closing the door on talent, he's not speaking in riddles. He's laying out a philosophy. A Sanchez-Grichuk tandem in the corners suddenly makes this offense feel intentional rather than improvised. You protect players from their weaknesses, you maximize their strengths, and you give the manager real tools instead of hopeful guesses. It's not flashy, but it's how good teams quietly win extra games. And then there's the kind of move that doesn't move headlines but can shift seasons at the margins. Claiming Ben Cowles off waivers from the Chicago Cubs is exactly the sort of depth addition that front offices love and fans learn to appreciate later. He's not arriving with star potential draped over his shoulders, but his defensive reputation is real, his athleticism plays, and in a long season, that sort of competence can become essential. It also adds pressure, and pressure is healthy. Leo Jimenez feels it now, and that internal competition is how standards rise. All of this feeds into a broader truth that's easy to miss in the noise. The Blue Jays may not have landed the blockbuster names, but they are constructing something sturdier than it appears at first glance. John Schneider will have options, matchups to exploit, and a bench that can actually influence games rather than merely occupy space. There's an understated confidence in that. So as spring training games finally arrive and the familiar rhythms return, this feels like a team still in motion, still listening to the market, still willing to act. If you're enjoying these deep dives and want to ride this unfolding story with us all season, do me a favor and like, share, and subscribe. The support truly does matter. Whatever comes next, you can be sure we'll break it down honestly, thoughtfully, and with a little knowing laughter here on the Blue Jays Report, because this story is far from finished.